Hey guys, I'm the Comics Kid 2099, and I've got a graphic novel that I wanted to talk to you guys about. DV8, Neighborhood Threat. This is written by Warren Ellis, and it is drawn by Humberto Ramos, and there was another guy, what is his name? I'm gonna look, because I don't want to not credit someone. Michael Lopez, he drew one issue, and there's a few other people here, Vaughn Kirby and Kevin West, but I don't remember any particular issue that they did unless all three of those guys who are not Humberto Ramos, unless they all three were working on one issue together, because I think Ramos did all of the issues here except for one of them. Either that, or one of these guys, or one or more of these guys are really good at mimicking his style. That's also possible. But anyway, that's the creative team. And this book, well, first of all, I guess I should say, I have been, for a little while, I've been in a pretty big Wildstorm mood. A while back, I watched an old iFanboy video where they talked about the Wildstorm universe in general, and they kind of talked about some of the stuff that they really liked from the Wildstorm universe, and it kind of got me in a mood to read more Wildstorm. Before watching that video, I was never really a huge Wildstorm fan. I had read some stuff from Wildstorm, but mostly it was stuff from creators that I was interested in. So you had Alan Moore's Wildcats run, I read that. You had the Warren Ellis run on the Authority, and then Mark Millar's run on the Authority, and then you had Warren Ellis's Planetary. And with all of those, I only read them because I had heard good things about those runs, and I was also interested in those very high-profile creators. This was the first thing I bought from the Wildstorm universe where I was actually interested in the characters, and it just so happened to be by Warren Ellis, who is, again, a high-profile creator. And when I first started reading this, I was not very sure of the premise. In the very first page, there's a little foreword by Warren Ellis where he basically says, I really wasn't that excited about this job, and then Jim Lee said, we want you to do this based on some movie. I don't remember what the movie was, and basically that piqued Warren Ellis's interest, and so he said, I'll do the first 8 issues of the series. And that right there is a big complaint I have about this book. This is only the first 6 issues of the series. First 6 issues and DV8 1/2 issue. All written by Warren Ellis, but they don't have issues 7 and 8, which are also written by Warren Ellis. And it could just be that I'm the kind of guy who, if a writer has a very long run on a book, or even a very short run, I like to see that entire run of issues as one long story, and each issue is like a chapter in that story. That's how I look at things, and so when you've got only 6/8 of the run collected in this book, and then the other 2 issues are not collected at all, that kind of makes me a little angry. I think it's stupid, and also to further add salt to the wound, I ended up liking this book, and so if they had done more trades, I would have probably sought those out and read them, because this really grabbed me. Now, like I said, I wasn't really sure if it would when I first started reading it, because at the very beginning of the book, Warren Ellis says, you know how most superheroes are basically good people and they do good things? Well, that's not what these guys are. These guys are selfish, bratty teenagers, and all they want to do is drink and do drugs and have sex with each other until they all die. And they're not good people. They are not superheroes. They work for this lady, and they basically just do immoral jobs, and then when they're not doing immoral jobs, they're basically just being hedonists. And there's not a whole lot of superhero action in this book. I think out of all the issues collected inside, there are 2 issues where there's an actual mission that the team goes on. And those are pretty interesting, but for me, the issues that I really gravitated towards were the issues that really focused on the characters. Because when you open up, there's like 7 or 8 characters in this book that it introduces you to, and I was afraid that it was going to throw so many characters at you all at once that it was going to be really hard for me to try and remember who is who. Well, fortunately, I didn't have that problem, partly because shortly into the book, there's a couple of issues that really only focus on 1 or 2 members of the team. So like Frostbite and Evo, they get an issue all to themselves where you really get to kind of get into their heads. And I want to say this whole premise that Warren Ellis presented in the foreword, the idea that these are selfish, bratty teenagers, they just happen to have superpowers, but that doesn't change the fact that they are selfish, bratty teenagers, this is a very complicated premise, and I would say Warren Ellis, he does it pretty well. He is walking a tightrope with this. He doesn't make these characters too unlikable and too immoral and just in general disgusting human beings. He doesn't go too far in that direction. If he did, I wouldn't care about these characters, and I wouldn't want to keep reading. I would barely even want to keep reading this book, let alone keep reading the series if I had the opportunity to do that. But he doesn't go too far in the other direction. These characters, they all first appeared in Gen 13, which was another Wildstorm series that was kind of the good kids of the Wildstorm universe. And these guys were basically meant to be the dark mirror to the Gen 13 kids. So he doesn't go too far in the direction of Gen 13, where they're all good, noble kids who are trying to save the world. He doesn't go too far in that direction. He still kind of stays on the premise, but he also makes me feel sorry for these characters. And when they do something that's a little morally reprehensible, I can kind of understand why. There's certain circumstances surrounding the lives of all of these characters, and I can get behind what they are doing because of these circumstances. And like I said, there's only like 2 issues where they're actually going on a mission, and in those issues, there's still some character stuff going on. This is a really character-heavy book, and I mean that in the sense that Warren Ellis really focuses on the characters. And even though he said at the beginning that he didn't really remember a whole lot about creating this series because he was doing drugs a lot back then and he just didn't remember it, I still feel like he had more invested in this than he lets on in the foreword. I really feel like Warren Ellis really should have just kept going with this. He shouldn't have stopped at issue 8 because he really has some interesting ideas here, and I think if he had kept going, this series probably would have been as well remembered as his Authority run. As is, it's been a long time since I've read his Authority or his Planetary, but I've read his Planetary more recently than Authority, but really, I really enjoyed this a lot more than I was expecting to, and I really wish that Warren Ellis had had more of an opportunity to kind of play around with these characters and do more with this concept. Now, I don't know anything about the people who followed him up on this. I know that there's only like 3 volumes of DV8 that have been collected, and the next 2 volumes, they kind of skip forward a little bit. They don't pick up immediately after this one. But just based on what I liked here, it's very possible that I'm going to get those other volumes just because I'm really interested in these characters, and I'm really interested to see if the next creative team, if they are staying in this middle ground between really immoral and disgusting human beings and noble superheroes, if they're going to stay in that middle ground or if they're going to take them in one direction or the other. And I think if you did take them in one direction or the other, you might say, well, that's not being true to the premise of the book, but I would say that you are building these characters and developing them and letting them grow as characters. So I'd be very interested to see how that happens. I think that's all I have to say. I really enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would. I definitely think I'll be rereading this sometime in the near future, and I would like to do some more reviews of other Wildstorm-related series, mainly stuff that's set in the Wildstorm universe. A while back, I was asking some people, after I realized that I was in a mood to read some Wildstorm, I asked some people on a comic book forum, hey, what are some Wildstorm stuff that I should read? And like, a fourth of the people said, you should read Ex Machina. And I was like, no, I don't want to read Ex Machina. Number 1, I've already read a few volumes of that. I didn't really care for it. And 2, it's not set in the Wildstorm universe. I want to read stuff that is actually in this world and not just from the imprint that is Wildstorm. That's all I have to say, so I hope that this review was helpful for you guys. I hope that you learned something new today. I hope that I was able to convince you to go out and find this book and buy it, or at least check it out somewhere. Maybe if it's at your library, go and read it there. But read this book. I think you will enjoy it. And that's all I have to say for today, so I will see you guys sometime later in the week with a different kind of video. Until then, I'll see you next time. Have a great day.